Hello, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci. This is CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on smart TVs 2016 forward. Don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on your YouTube channel. Now, on CFL Talk, joining me as usual is David Morassutti. David, how you doing, buddy?
Great. How are you guys doing?
Eduardo isn't here, but he's back from a month away. Shiva and other reasons kept him away from us. He's back and getting over a death in the family, which is really terrible, especially when the death is of somebody who's younger than you are. It's not something that I would want to visit on anyone. So my condolences to Eduardo and his family. That's a terrible situation. 47 by my standards is a child.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And condolences obviously go out to Eduardo, who he does his best to keep us up and running as much as possible, and obviously Jewish holidays too. We have a lot of this is the holiday period now.
September's is a good month for Jewish holidays.
September and then we got October coming up.
Yep.
Thanks.
They're everywhere.
Gobble gobble.
Absolutely. So here it is. We pretty much sensed there was a good chance. This is, of course, we always start with the Argos. That goes without saying. Well, we don't start with the Argos. The Argos are the team that David and I cover, and I think it's really important. And how shall I say this? To pick up where we left off last show, we talked about this being a golden opportunity for the Toronto Argonauts, the management team, including the coach, of course, to rest their number one quarterback and put in their number two, and possibly even their number three, who have not had a start in the Canadian Football League ever. It was a no-brainer to do that. And when the game started, I spoke to you while the game was on, and David's voice was, I can't believe what's going on here. Are you seeing this, Frank? I said, no, I'm trying to get the guys at Boston Pizza to put the freaking football game on the screen. They had the hockey game on 4 TVs. They had the Blue Jays on 3 TVs. They had golf on 1 TV. I don't know what was on another TV. And I'm going, put the Argos on. Oh, yeah, I said the Blue Jays. Put the Argos on TV. Oh, they finally did, but by then I'd missed all the excitement early and made it to the end of the first half. And, of course, I came home and then watched it. So I did watch the game, so I am educated as to what the team looked like. But you were very excited when I spoke to you. You were, I think it's a fair reaction to be surprised that your first-time quarterback, pitching his first game in the CFL, he throws 2 touchdowns in two different sequences, the first 2 sequences of the evening.
It's just how efficient he was, right? Like they weren't asking him to do everything, but he was just getting it done, right? And so what really impressed me with what Dukes was doing is in the first start, I didn't think he was looking at his reads, or not his start, his relief appearance. His reads weren't as crisp. I didn't think he was doing a good job putting himself in positions to extend plays, right? He kind of sat in the pocket a little bit too much, put himself in those subs. This time around, he looks like a totally different quarterback. Looks so much more comfortable in that pocket.
Absolutely. And it might have had something to do with his experience in the first game that he had.
No, for sure. No, I think you have tape on yourself. You know what you have to work on, and it helps in a huge way.
Well, butterflies and nerves. I apologize. I have a cold, folks, and I was afraid it would rear its ugly head. Yeah. So he looked good. And they accomplished what they needed to accomplish, and that is get him in there playing in a game against a really good team in a game that matters. Like, it was a perfect scenario for the Argos to run him. There's no way that shouldn't happen. I don't understand that people are. Some of the stuff on the internet's really ridiculous. I don't know.
And the worst part was the people reacting to Chad Kelly not playing, but people reacting and being upset about the Argos losing that game. That was a close game until the fourth quarter. And what did the Argos then is that they just didn't have enough possession time.
Because they didn't stop the run.
Yeah. Well, and they also didn't have, I say, one of their best, linebackers in Wynn McManus, and Sean Oakman wasn't playing. Like they didn't dress their A+ defense, but still, yeah, you'd like to see them stop the run a little bit better. The two losses, funny enough, the two losses the Argos have had this season, the run game was the reason why.
Yep.
The big reason why they allowed big plays on the ground.
Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, Brady Oliveira proved that he is, at least in that game anyway, with what he did in that game, that he's the best running back in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I think AJ Ouellette, you can make a case in some ways for AJ Ouellette, but considering the workload that Brady Oliveira has had since the start of the year, that gives him that claim because he is a central component of that offense. AJ Ouellette is an important part of the Argos offense, don't get me wrong, but he also would, I think many would agree, he doesn't get the usage like Brady Oliveira does.
Well, for me, it's just a simple fact of how many yards they both run for. It's not a crime to be the second best running back in the Canadian Football League.
No, not at all. When having a good running back, it's tough. How many teams have those types of running backs, right?
Exactly.
That you can
Exactly.
and the good teams, you're seeing the best teams in the league, they all have a running game. In some way, shape, or form, they can rely on a running game.
Absolutely. And let's be clear. Brady Oliveira proved that he is an important. You talked about him being central to their offense. Absolutely, he's central. He stirs the drink. He's the guy that gets them their first downs. And in this game, he's the guy that kept the first downs happening. Whenever they needed him for a longer run, he must have had at least a half dozen first downs on first down running the ball. He must have had at least a half dozen where he did it all by himself. And this is for, like, we follow the Argos all the time, so there is this. We do have an Argo flavor here, and the flavor now is this, because when we talk to the Argos and stuff, we're going to want to know from them, what are you going to do about stopping a guy like that? That question was asked before the Grey Cup too, David, and they figured out something for that. And we heard from the coach, Coach Dinwiddie said, we're not tipping our hand in this game. Forget it. So in other words, they went in there with the playbook pretty simplified, right? And they went in there knowing that there was a good chance they were going to lose. I think, and I don't think they care. It's a process for them. They don't have any bye weeks, right? They have no bye weeks left. The only bye week they have right now is that they clinched being the home team in the final in the East. But other than that, they don't have any bye weeks. So they got to take advantage of this opportunity they've earned. They've earned the right to rest guys. So go for it.
They had to play six. They had to play 6 straight games, right? They have to create their own bye weeks. I talked to Ryan Dinwiddie about this. They have a plan. They are going to be sticking to that plan, and they're going to create their own bye weeks because they need to. They need to do that. And so people upset. I wrote in my story going into the game, don't blame the Argos for benching Chad Kelly. Blame the CFL for how they did the schedule this year. Why a team has 3 bye weeks in their first 10 within their first 10 games? Why are we having the Grey Cup rematch this late into the season? I'm sorry.
With there being a chance that it would be insignificant to both teams or to one. Well, you know what? As far as the game goes, the way the game was played, we saw some hope in a quarterback that is not going to be totally cold going in cold. He's going to have some some experience. Now I'm going to say something here, and I don't mean to say this to irritate the Argo fans, or you for that matter. This year, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have played down to the level of their opponents.
Yeah.
If you recall, all their games that they played, they lost to teams that they had no business losing to. They lost to, I think it's three or four of the games that they lost, maybe all four. 3 of 4 of the games they lost were against teams with a new starting quarterback. So think about that. Like when they lost to Hamilton, was a new starting quarterback. When they lost to Ottawa, it was a new starting quarterback. Well, when they lost to Saskatchewan, it was Dolegala because the starting quarterback was hurt. So, they play down to the level of the opposition. So don't get too full of yourselves, fans, and say, well, we played without our number one quarterback, so that loss was predictable. Well, it's still one of those things where, what the Argo players and the coach and this team has said now for the past 2 years. It's all about being 1-0. Forget about yesterday, forget about tomorrow, worry about today. And that today was a game where they got a chance to bring in a young quarterback and try some new DBs as well. Not only linebackers, but DBs too.
Yeah, and people always it wasn't like the Argos just sat Chad Kelly.
No.
People,
Did you see some of this stuff on the internet? He was being benched because he threw 2 interceptions in the last game.
oh, yeah, that was
That
yeah, that was the American outlet that clearly doesn't watch a wink of CFL football. But the one I would say was the more prevalent one was like people actually thought the Argos would be worried about playing Chad Kelly in the environment in Winnipeg. And I'm like, that is the silliest thing I've ever heard, because I hate to tell you this, it doesn't get easier if you go into the playoffs. And I hate to tell you this, Winnipeg fans travel pretty well. And if that
Mhm.
team in Hamilton ends up being an Argo, an Argo Blue Bomber final, that's not an easy environment to play in. So I don't understand this
He
idea.
played in it for a couple of downs last year. So it's not like he doesn't know what it's all about.
Yeah, so I don't get this idea where people are making it feel like the Argos are trying to cover themselves up from.
Oh boy, that's just somebody doing that. In internet parlance, it's called trolling. That's what the kids call it.
Mm-hmm.
They call it trolling. So there's always going to be trolls around, right? They're always going to be around people who really have an agenda. And here's the agenda for us. I love the Canadian Football League. I love watching the games they play, but I'm not worried about drilling too deep and trying to explain things that I feel don't need explaining that closely. In other words, if the coach says we're going to rest this guy because we can, I'm just gonna say, you know what? What I see, the facts laying in front of me, he rested him because he wanted to he wanted to rest him. He wasn't trying to hide him. He was just trying to rest him. And you know what? Let's be clear about this. You can almost say what was said is true to a degree. I'll put it to this degree. If you're going to sit him out, why not sit him out against Winnipeg, a team that has something, a really good team that has something to fight for? You got a choice now. You don't want to hang your guy out to dry, because now you've clinched the playoffs, the playoff spot as the Eastern Eastern final home team, and that could be a little bit of that as well. Could be in there. He got a choice, but the fact that he sat Kelly, and again, he put Dukes in. He put Dukes in a game where Dukes really had a chance to learn, and I think that's the key. It's not about Kelly; it's about Dukes
I think so
and
too.
Scott.
What did Ryan Dinwiddie say after the game? I think I found my backup quarterback.
There you go.
Because all season long, we were talking. You ask anybody what they think were question marks with this Argos team. Number one was backup quarterback. That was their biggest flaw. They did not have an established backup.
Do you think if they had an opportunity to trade for one, you think they might go for it? The trade line coming? Trade deadline coming?
I don't think so. I
You
think
don't think they're going to go for another quarterback?
I don't think so because I think I think that, you know what, unless one readily becomes available, like who's eliminated now from the playoffs? Like I don't see Ottawa having anyone that I want. Edmonton, like there's no one on Edmonton, right? Like you don't want anyone else on Edmonton. I don't see any team offering up a
Well, you're
quarterback.
not going to get Trey Ford, and if there's one I wanted, that would be the guy.
You're not getting no. Trey
Not
Ford
getting
is
Trey
sticking
Ford.
around in Edmonton. You're not getting. You don't want a Taylor Cornelius because you'll be doing Edmonton a favor rather than
And
doing
too
you
much money.
a favor. Too much money. So, in my opinion, the best thing that the Argos can do is shore up their depth, especially.
They're going to roll him out again. Dinwiddie said he's going to sit Kelly 2 games of the 6.
Yeah, he's sitting on the last game of the year. Like he's going to play Friday against that's the big 150th, and then like you can take your pick, but I would nobody. They usually don't play their starters the last week of the year, so I would say that final game against I think it's Ottawa.
Ottawa. Yep, Ottawa.
Likely not going. It's a
Nice.
nothing game for either both teams at this rate. So
Well, they're all playing. The guys that'll be on the field will be playing for playoffs, but some of them will be playing for next year on
yes,
both teams. Not as many in Toronto as in Ottawa.
no,
Pretty much the whole team in Ottawa is going to be playing for next year.
Yeah.
That's the only motivation they got going.
No, exactly. So that's kind of where I think that they should be at with the way they manage Jack Kelly for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and you know what? It'll be fun to see Cameron Dukes develop into a quarterback that can do. Remember, folks, let's not be short sighted here. Kelly came in the Grey Cup at the end of the game. A couple of plays made a difference.
Having that final game of the year, that was the only game he started was that final game of the year. They hadn't played him any other time, and he went into that Grey Cup game and didn't
He
look
played
like
the nothing game against Calgary. That last game you're talking about.
Montreal. It was
Oh,
Montreal.
okay, Montreal. All right.
Yeah, and yeah, he had a few sporadic snaps throughout the
Couple
season.
interceptions.
Yeah, but nothing like that game that cemented his ability to at least show that he could do something in the CFL.
Well, they got to get the butterflies out.
Oh yeah, you can't throw.
Right? That's just something players have. Their first game, they're going to have butterflies.
No
You got to
doubt.
get rid of those. You got to get rid of those, and then see how he plays.
Exactly.
So we've got a chance now to see that maybe because when we look at the crosstown rivals, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who played Calgary and look pretty strong. We've got 2 really good teams in the East now. They beat Calgary 22-15. I'm telling you, David, they're rounded into shape, and those Ticat fans are going to start getting cocky. They're going to start. They're going to warm up in their closets and maybe even in their basements. Argos suck. Argos suck. They're warming up. It's coming.
It always is.
I love it. I got to tell you, I do really love it.
I mean, it keeps some intrigue going in the CFL. Let's just say
Absolutely. Whatever gets the excitement going, because let's face it, the excitement in the stands does spread to the field as much as it's a symbiotic relationship, as much as it spreads from the field to the stands. So, and they beat Calgary. David, Calgary really looks like they're going to be in rebuild mode. Not next man up, next team up.
No, exactly. The next few weeks are going to be very. Now it's work. I like a lot of teams have already started clinching playoff berths and things like that. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage. Again, it's not just to rest guys because you can't just rest guys for the rest of the year. You got to keep them fresh. I'm curious to see how teams will navigate that now in the final stretch of the year.
As Saskatchewan is, they've got some work to do. it isn't a walkover for them.
No, but I think
they've got to earn their way.
They're on the driver's seat, but they can't say that they're over the finish line right now.
Not by any stretch. So Hamilton makes Calgary look ordinary. And the amazing thing is that the reason I came up with Hamilton after the previous conversation is because of backup quarterbacks. Schultz was brought in 2 touchdowns at the end of the game. You and I have always had faith in him when he was in Montreal and came to Hamilton. We thought that was a good move on their part. He paid him back.
Yes, he did, and that's again, that's the value of having that other guy that you can rely on. And I will say this: I thought that with the way that Hamilton's season's been going, I would have thought that Schultz would have been back in this game. Like why he wasn't in this game to begin with, you were coming. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not. So with this game, you saw Taylor Powell how he looked against Toronto. It wasn't great. So you had every excuse to bring Matthew Schultz back in.
I think that's why they didn't. They want to maintain his confidence. They wanted to build up his game and then give him a heads up on when they're going to bring Schultz in, because they're going to do that. They've got to do that. They've got to give Schultz a game or some reps too. Because is Bo Levi Mitchell really the answer? I know he's throwing the ball on the sidelines. I know he's at practice. They have a very luxurious position. They literally have now 3 quarterbacks with starting experience.
That's true. They do have a wealth of that. The thing is, it's one thing to have the experience, but it's another thing to have the talent, right?
Absolutely.
So, Powell has had ups and downs for sure. I mean, let's not forget, Hamilton had won 4 of their last 6 games. They were doing something right with Powell there, but I just think to get to that next level, to tell yourself who's going to give us the best chance to win in games against good opponents, I don't know if I can trust Taylor Powell to do that.
Yeah, and Schultz is a guy that was brought in, and I think it was math. He was the guy that could be brought in for a price that could be a backup. So Powell was a bonus this year. Let's be clear. When they started their season, Hamilton had no way believed that Powell could do what he did this season. If anybody was going to do that kind of stuff, they expected Schultz to do it, but then he turned around and got hurt.
Exactly.
And that's the sensitivity of quarterbacks, right? And that's why when you sit Kelly, sorry, just thought I'd mention that. You want to make sure players are healthy, rested, because that's how they don't get hurt more often than not. It's when players are tired, they get hurt. So they've got an opportunity here. Hamilton does they have a wealth of riches at the quarterback position. If I'm the Hamilton management team, I'm really happy about the way things are. This is good what they got going on.
It is, and I've been wanting some intrigue, right? I want to see competitive. It's to keep the
You want intrigue? Remember we talked about a trade, 3-way trade, Schultz to Toronto with another team in between?
Who was that team?
I don't know. I'm just saying, is there a team, a middleman team? Because you know full well that Hamilton isn't going to trade Schultz to Toronto.
No, but I don't even think Hamilton's going to trade Schultz. I think they're going to play him as long as Bo Levi Mitchell isn't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Schultz is not going anywhere.
I was just putting that out there.
But I will say, I don't know what Matthew Schultz's contract status is like, but I think there are some teams that could look to Matthew Schultz as their if Matthew Schultz can put on a good showing to end the season. Guess what? That's gonna look pretty well for him in his off season outlook.
Absolutely. So in the game, Hamilton, as I said, Schultz came in and rescued the team. Did a great job of rescuing them. It's one thing to see what happened, and you still got that. Tim White impresses me. White and Butler, they are 2 really good players that they're able to depend on.
Yes, and that's a luxury in a lot of cases, right? Not a lot of teams can say they have that.
Not at all.
So you just kind of have to you take your chances when you go with those options too, right? But when they work out, they make you look really good.
Well, when they brought Tim in, they brought him in with the intent of him being that good, like he was when he was in BC. Then, of course, we have Montreal and Ottawa. Well, Montreal is cementing their. Well, they clinched. They're in the playoffs.
No doubt. We need
They beat the only team that could catch them of any concern, and they helped them their cause in staying close to Hamilton. So things are good that way. So Montreal's in good shape. This is going to be an interesting playoff. Every playoff game to me is, man, it's got stuff going on like Hamilton and Montreal. I'm going, oh, that game is going to be something. It's not a 4-14 team playing a 9-9 team. It's two teams that I think they'll both be above 500 by the time they meet. I think they're on a roll, both of them.
I think Montreal's defense is on a massive roll right now. Talk about a producing. It's one thing to have a good defense, another to have a producing defense, right? Pick
Absolutely.
six, fumble return for a touchdown, 5 sacks. Like and this is not just out of nowhere for this Montreal defense. They've been doing this the last few years. So if I'm look, people are putting Toronto into the Grey Cup. I'm not that type of person. I can't do it until I see how both teams line up. If this is the type of effort you're going to get from Montreal, it's going to give Toronto a very hard time.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. James Butler sits third in rushing TDs in the league, and he had a real slow start.
I think when you look at when you look at that, people say, "Oh, look at this quarterback who's leading the league in rushing touchdowns." And this is where I feel like the league has to change that stat to a quarterback sneaking touchdown. Because it's not for running backs who don't get the benefit of having the offensive line, push, and you only have to do is stretch forward.
Well, and you're not giving the ball in the 2-yard line often.
No, like almost never. If you do it, that's just because you have a lot of faith that your running back is going to get it in. But CFL teams do not do it at all.
Yeah, if your name's not Brady Oliveira,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, or James Butler, because Hamilton will give it to
Butler
Butler.
has been such an important addition for that Hamilton offense because
He's coming through the way they hoped.
they need a good running game. You especially
Every team does. Yep.
they don't in the CFL. You don't want your quarterback throwing the ball 50 times. Just not a thing you want. So
Absolutely.
I do like James Butler was a perfect pickup for Hamilton. In that regard, I maybe thought that there was times where they didn't use him enough, but I do like what that has done for the game.
Absolutely. Big thrilling thing. So Calgary loses to Hamilton, and we talked about Montreal and Ottawa. What do you do with Ottawa? I guess they've had some bad luck with quarterbacks. Their running game. I don't know if you credit Montreal with Ottawa's futility in the game. Is it more Ottawa? I think you said it earlier that it's the defense.
Yeah,
And it appears their defense did a number on Ottawa.
and you're not running the ball when you're trailing.
No,
right? Teams aren't doing that, so that when you're constantly behind in games, it's going to be tough to have high expectations for a running attack when you don't have the other parts to complement a running game, right? They just don't have the offense right now. They need to reinvent that offense. That offense is putting them in such bad spots. Defense is getting tired because they can't stay on the field. I think they need an overhaul. I know it's Kahari Jones is the offensive coordinator. I don't. You got to figure out if he can do the job, or you got to look elsewhere. But I think that whole system needs to be overhauled. You need to.
well, one thing's for sure: they need a quarterback, a consistently good quarterback. They need a running game. We see now that Montreal with William Stanback is finally rounding into the form that we're accustomed. He ran for 85 yards, which isn't stellar, but it's very useful in helping an offense, move along. And he's running really well, and the timing's perfect towards the end of the year. It's going to be interesting. Um, I like what Montreal does, and they do it with a lot of intensity. They're a very robust team. They're very physical, and you got to be ready to play when you're playing them. They play a very physical game.
Oh, they do, and I give them a lot of credit for that. Um, it's just, yeah, Ottawa. I don't have a lot of. I want to give Ottawa fans some semblance of things they can look forward to, but I don't think you should excuse what's happened this year in Ottawa. Right? Like, this was supposed to be the dawn of something different. Yes, they have the built-in excuse of Jeremiah Mazzoli getting hurt, but
Twice.
twice. But going into this year, we knew his health was going to be a factor, and unfortunately, their backup plan was Nick Arbuckle, which, in my opinion, I'm sorry, Nick Arbuckle hadn't shown anything to me to suggest that you know, he was ready to lead in the case of an injury. So I think with Ottawa right now, you look at some teams that have had to throw in some younger quarterbacks. I don't know. I mean, they have Crum. I don't know who else they have, um, who they have left behind them. I would start looking at who you got, right? Who do you have moving forward?
They definitely need to have something. Crum looked good, but for some reason they weren't able to build on him. Everyone saw what he could do, and everyone that played him after he had those two first good games figured out how to make his life miserable. It's too bad, but that's basically what happened. Montreal's Cody Fajardo, a starting quarterback who's fitting in really well with Montreal. Montreal, whether it was Harris or Fajardo, in my opinion, it wasn't going to be any different. The only reason it's Fajardo in there is because his head coach brought him with him. You know,
Well,
the devil,
that and Montreal kind of got off on, you remember, like, they got off to a
Yes,
slow
yes,
start. So, but yes, I do think no, Montreal has put themselves in a good position, right? They had the 4-game losing streak, but look, 2 straight wins for them right now. Them and BC are the only team right now to have a consecutive winning streak of 2 or more games currently.
right.
Oh, Saskatchewan's lost 4 in a row. Calgary's lost 3 in a row. Edmonton's coming off a loss. Montreal's won 2 in a row. Hamilton's been trading back and forth with wins. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, building some semblance of confidence and an identity. That's the big one for Montreal. What was going to be their identity? I couldn't tell you what that identity was at the start of the year. I'm starting to see it now. Really, really tough on defense. Get that pass rush. On offense, yeah, they got offense. I'm still questioning a little bit.
Well,
Can
run the ball. Don't make any mistakes, and it's more, go for the odd big play, but it's really not what they're going to do. Fajardo's not going to do big play things, right? So he's got to be a workman,
they'll
and
lose the game? He's trying not to lose the game.
yeah, and this is important. Not losing the game is very important.
Yeah.
Now, Saskatchewan to me is a quandary. I mean, they blow hot and cold. We watched this team, and they looked amazing against Winnipeg when they beat them. They beat Winnipeg. They did a great job of beating them, and they've had trouble ever since. I don't know whether they said, okay, we've accomplished what we need to do this year. And maybe also it's the old situation of they're basically playing to the level of the opposition that's chasing them in the standings.
I couldn't tell you. That's, I mean, in a way, it'd be a little inexcusable, in my opinion, right? Like, at some point, you need to take the next step forward, right? They went with a whole new direction, and it's been kind of the same old, in my opinion.
Well, they've got to figure it out. But as far as I'm concerned, Montreal and Hamilton are working towards the playoffs. They look like they're getting ready for the playoffs, which is good news for CFL fans. of every city, really, and anybody who's watching these football games. We haven't talked much about the West. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are, when they play angry, they're incredible. But it seems to me that sometimes they're not motivated, and the hope is for them and their fans is that they're motivated when the games really matter. I guess if they're not going to play well against bad teams, that's something that's not so bad. But when it comes to the playoffs, they've got to get ready to do something. They're in a battle with BC to finish first, and either of those teams, either of them, David, want first place because both those home crowds are a big advantage for both those teams. Whether you go into BC or whether you go into Winnipeg, you're going into a good crowd that supports their team a lot.
A lot. And like that's why Cameron Dukes played in Winnipeg. If you want to throw a guy into the fire, there's no bigger fire than in Winnipeg.
Exactly.
Top attendance in the league the last few years.
It's in the mental bank.
Yeah.
He knows he can play there. And there aren't many places worse than Winnipeg at home in a game they really want to win. So Saskatchewan is tripping a little bit, but like I said, I think it has more to do with the opposition not putting any pressure on them. And they really don't think, I don't think they have a shot. BC and Winnipeg now have created a situation where it's them two alone for first place. They're the best two teams in the West. One of them is going to finish first. And Saskatchewan literally can sit there wringing their hands going, okay, which one of you guys are going to play us? But they do have to get their game in order. Their offense leaves a lot to be desired. It's not a consistent offense. 3 of the top 10 receivers in the CFL play for Saskatchewan.
And that's crazy to think.
Right? And that offense is questionable.
Oh, it's very questionable because they don't at times they struggle so much, and it doesn't bother me, but it's like, you're not making life easier for yourself. I understand that you're down to your third string quarterback, but that third string quarterback threw for over 400 yards, and you had 0 touchdowns to show for it. Right?
Absolutely.
I do think. I mean, okay, there was the quarterback sneaks and whatever, yeah, but it doesn't also help that your defense allowed the other quarterback to throw for 458 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Saskatchewan, the blueprint is there. There is good things happening. Keon Schaefer-Baker has looked like we've expected of him. But where is the production that comes with that type of yardage? Where is it? It's
over and above Schaefer-Baker, the playmaker.
Exactly. Right? They kept it close. I'll give them this wasn't a blowout, but man, like these are games you got to find ways to win. You got to create that semblance of confidence that you can beat a team like BC, that you can beat a team like Winnipeg. You're gonna get a bit of an easier schedule right now. You got the Tiger Cats coming up, then you have the Stampeders, and the Argos coming up. Like that might be their hardest game, right? I think they end their week on a bye too, right? So, like, I want to see this Rough Riders team be a team that can say, you know what, they might be able to be able to surprise someone, but their play to me hasn't been rather inspiring because they haven't really beaten teams, and the teams that they've beaten, they've barely beaten them. They lose to Ottawa a few weeks ago. They lose to Edmonton. There's something to build off of, but it's up to this team to start putting it together.
Absolutely. They've got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got, let's see, who do we have left in the West? Edmonton. They didn't play.
Nope.
Edmonton looked good. As far as I'm concerned, their trajectory is good. Obviously not for this year because there's not much they're going to be able to do this year. But you like where they've been, and you were talking about hope for teams, and they're a team that have developed some hope.
I think so. It's going to take some time for them to. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for them to put it all together, but they've got the quarterback. You take advantage of this quarterback being being young on a cheaper deal. I hate to say it, but it's a bonus. But dynamic. You got a dynamic quarterback. That's important for that's important in the CFL. You need someone that's able to make plays from the quarterback position. You don't go. I hear it all the time from coaches. If our quarterback gives us a chance, if our quarterback puts us in the position to win, we believe we can win it, right? And I don't know. Trey Ford can get there eventually.
Yes.
So something to definitely watch for. See how they do.
We've got a little bit of time left. So have you heard about the musical announcements at the Grey Cup?
Yes, I'm excited.
Absolutely.
You are someone, Frank, that has done a lot of these festivals more than I. I
Right.
haven't done any of the festivals.
Okay.
Because I've never traveled to a Grey Cup. The only one I've ever been to is Hamilton. We know that the Hamilton one was a COVID year, so it wasn't really much happening. Carrie Underwood seems like a very big get for a festival.
Absolutely.
And then Green Day.
Yep.
That's going to be a show.
We've got country and rock covered.
Yes, you do. Somebody wondered why didn't Carrie Underwood just do the Grey Cup halftime? I said, well, I don't know what her schedule allows for. And you know what? They don't need to do country every year. Like the country act last year didn't work. That was one of the more lackluster Grey Cup halftime performances I've ever seen. I like Green Day. I prefer bands personally. I'm a band guy for halftime shows. I think bands put on great shows. I mean, we've had some good solo acts at the Grey Cup too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, Green Day. That's a name. It's a name that can draw people to the game. Carrie Underwood. Get even fans of people who aren't even fans of the CFL going to that festival.
Yeah,
It draws in a new demographic, which is what I've been asking for the CFL to do for years. Get somebody that's going to draw in. Sorry to say this, Frank, but I mean, you know who Carrie Underwood is, but are you gravitated towards Carrie Underwood?
Well, I'm not. I think she's okay. I mean, she's married to Mike Fisher, an Ottawa senator, former Ottawa senator.
There's a Canadian connection there.
Right? Plays for Nashville.
This is something I wanted to bring up. You brought this up for me. People are upset that the acts are not Canadian. What I say to that is I don't want an act to be there because they're Canadian. I think that's insincere. That's very disingenuous to go on and get an act just because they're Canadian. If they are a good act, I don't care what nationality they are. Personally, I don't. Would it be nice to have a Canadian act? Oh, I definitely believe so. But you have to have the right act for a big performance. You know, if you put that in that criteria every year that the act has to be Canadian, your Grey Cup halftime shows aren't going to be as big of a draw.
Well, the other thing is it's all about timing too, right?
Yes.
Right. It's about timing. Who can you get on that day for that day that isn't booked elsewhere?
No, exactly.
Right. You know, so they all set up their dates 2 and 3 years in advance. I'm sure Green Day it fits right in the CFL groove. You know, that's the kind of bads they've had. Not your pop guys, guys a little more bands. And when I say guys, I mean guys and girls too. That have a little more edge to their music, and so I think they're going to be a good
I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm you know what's funny? I'm not the biggest Green Day fan, but to have that ability to go to see them live is going to be great.
Absolutely. David, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Thank you, Frank.
And we'll see you again next week. Of course, this is CFL Talk. I'm Candid Frank. He's David Morassutti. Thank you for watching CFL. Airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it. And don't forget Candid Frank on YouTube. See you next time.